Cutting edge guests, awesome, uncensored, jaw-dropping information, plus funny memes, good deeds, and loads of laughter. Kind of have it all. Ladies and gentlemen, if your soul's awake, then welcome, because you're in the right place. Oh, welcome back to Sovereign Soul Show. We are in the hunting blind right now, Roll Tide, Alabama. And just before coming on here, Derek took off the cam makeup. I put the camo hat on, and he was rubbing the antlers together because there's a big old 8-point buck that's walking around, and he needs to get him. So welcome back, mate. This is our Go to Hell show. Last week was Told You So, and hope you all had a good Thanksgiving, and everywhere in the world that you are. This is the Go to Hell show. We'll tell you why we named that in just a moment, but yeah, you need a cup of coffee. You haven't yawned for 30 seconds. So far, you're winning. That's amazing.
That was me. When I smile like that, I can deter the yawn just for about 30 more seconds. So
yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty awesome. Why don't you tell the audience why this is the Go to Hell Now? There you go. Show.
Oh, well, we were just talking about in the pre-show about how
Trump.
President Trump is creating it's not reinventing, but it's just bringing back a culture of young people that won't be afraid to say anything, won't be afraid to stand up, call a spade a spade. I always had teachers in high school and school that were like, "Oh, there's no such thing as a dumb question." I'm like, I think there is. Uh, you know, and I remember my first year of college, I had a class that they made you take it. It was a low level algebra or I can't remember what it was, but it was low level. And it would be like x plus 2 equals 6. And then they would take on a blackboard. This was still back during the blackboard days, piece of chalk. And they would go, I remember this professor really well. I'm probably judging wrong, but you never know. But more than likely, I bet the dude was a liberal looking back on it. But, just the way he talked, had a little lisp, one of those things that maybe a little, you know what I mean? Like Fred Sanford, you say, right? And, but he would literally, it'd be like, so I said x plus 2 equals 6. So he'd go, okay, so the first thing you have to do is identify that this is a positive, and this number's sitting over here on the other side, so we have to get this number to this side. I'm sitting there thinking, really? Is it? We got to go through this step? That's pretty easy. Just subtract the 2 from the 6, and it's x equals 4. And he was like, we're going to have to slow, just don't get ahead. And he would do literally, you got to minus.
This is their college part?
Yeah. And this was way back, this was
Well,
like
it makes sense if it was
2001.
at CSU. You said it was liberal, so they masked everyone.
Put the minus sign here, -2. And you have to, if you do it to this side, you have to do it to this side as well.
You do that.
I'm like,
well.
I'm sitting there like, dude, you gotta be kidding me. So me and a buddy of mine just kept always answering it like before he could get to the
yeah.
and he dismissed us out of class. He was like, look, just come on test day. That's all you need to do.
This sounds like the guy. South Park must have got their inspiration for that type of teacher. That sounds like that teacher on South
exactly.
Park.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there like, we were just making sure we weren't going to get, like a bad check for not being in class. So he actually dismissed us and told us we were free to not come to class. No tardy, no that, like, just don't come. Just come on test day. Right. So we were like, thank you, because it was during it was right at the time period where lunch was about there. So we had 2 hours for lunch, which was perfect. So we were like, deuces, bro. Thank you so much. But, so President Trump is bringing back that to where, if someone asks a dumb question, you can be like he was talking about the cognitive test when they said, what body part were they checking? I'm sitting there going, first off, it's all theater. We know. You and I know this whole thing is pre-planned, pre-recorded, and all that. But for the people thinking this is real, I'm like, man, what if he would have just totally slayed it? Said, you know what body part they were MRIing? That would have been hilarious if he'd have just been like left it like that. But he was
Yeah.
like, well, it obviously wasn't the brain because I aced the test. And he was like, something you couldn't do. And then when he was like, okay, and no, and he went, you too. You thought he was like already done with it, and then he looked at the other reporter and he was like, you too, and then turned and walked away. So good night. That extra you too,
Spanked.
after he looked like he was already done, like something you couldn't do, and he was like, okay, and no question, you too. I love that attitude. Like that's what we got to get back to now. There are people out there going, "Oh, we don't need bullying and all this other stuff." I'm like, there's a difference in outright bullying a kid that has some, deformity or something of that nature. But when it's like two guys in a locker room or guys in a locker room, normally when you're picking on someone, it's kind of it's like, hey, I think you're cool. Let me teach you how to come back from this. If someone says, like me, when I was growing up, I was skinny, and my dad taught me all these like comebacks. It's like someone says, I say, well, they say you got to dance around in the shower to get wet. Dad's like, well, say, your fat ass can't even get in the shower. You have to actually get a workout to lift your leg up to get the first leg over in the bathtub, right? So just little things like that when you're 14 or 15, that's a big deal to come back with that and go, hey, you get a workout just lifting your fat ass leg up over into the bathtub. That's a pretty harsh comeback for 13, 14 years old, right? So he's like learning all those things, and President Trump's just making it to where there's no more cancel culture. And you want to say something? Well,
Yep.
guess what? You FAFO, right?
Making
It's like,
Chappelle great again. Making
and
Chappelle
it
great.
can work both ways. It can work both ways. So it's FAFO is universal. It can work both ways. So it's like, well, you know, at work, someone may get, and we got to bring that back too. That's another thing that you and I have lived through is the fact that, in the military, you can say whatever you want to say, and then there's consequences depending on who it is and what rank that is. I had a buddy one time. He was like, told the sergeant, he said, with all due respect, Sergeant, addressed him accordingly. He said, Sergeant first. He said, with all due respect, Sergeant, I'm not doing that shit like that. And he went off on him, dropped him. Dude pushed till his tongue was hanging out.
Push the
Right.
ground.
Then he recovered him. He's like, I respect you for that, but go do it. He still had to do it. He still had to do it. But he was the only one that could do it.
Yep.
Whatever. I can't remember what we were doing. But, people forget that, like, at work, you may have a bad day. A bad day don't mean you have a bad life, but you may have a bad day. Sometimes some people just need to say whatever it is, say something. It may not be to you, it may be at you. And then chalk it up. So, like, next day, don't hold grudges, right? Just be like, man, they had a bad day. And sometimes people will feel bad for it, and they'll come back to you and say, look, I had a rough day yesterday. All you got to do is like, you know what? We all have them. And then that way, if something happens to you and you need to go
Right.
full steam ahead,
Exactly.
then they should have the graces to go, hey, I get it. You remember me the other day? And we brought so much DEI and wokeness and all this. You can't do this. HR. Like I would never make it in corporate world today. In the last 20 years, I'd have never made it because,
for sure.
I would have been in HR every day. I'd have been in HR every day. We're like, yeah. No. I already know what I did. Don't even worry about giving me a report and assessment. All right, yeah, I said it. Pink slip. And I'm like, yep, I know. Give me my pink slip. I'm out of here. So we got to get back to that whole, like, my dad was talking about this about straight line management versus they tried to use the term team concept, and it wasn't really that, right? Straight line management is where you have an absolute boss and a chain of command, and then this boss has what he has, and this boss has this. They try to remove all that, oh, that's too harsh, and you can't say this, and you can't tell people to do this, and you can't. It works. You're not at work to be a social club. Like, especially if you're in a product, got a product line, you're there to create and to build and produce that product. That's it. And so many people forget that. You're not going home with your coworkers unless you're doing something like that. But like that. But people forget about this stuff. We're humans. We have days. We're gonna have days. We're gonna have bad days. We're gonna have days where, you know what, you're getting on my nerves. Uh,
You
and
know, yeah,
don't
it's
get offended.
awesome because we also have to get back to recognize we're social creatures and we all have our own space, right?
Yeah.
And an alpha men have a space, and divine women have a space, and a man isn't to be a woman, and a woman should not have to be a man. We're talking about psyops as well, not only just the last, number of years, but like President Trump was saying, we saw in the clip, this go to hell. He talked about the smallies in Minneapolis and cleaning it up, and the hundreds of thousands that have been brought in there, and the billions of dollars of taxpayer money that they have defrauded from the American government. Doge has caught it. They've got it all. And he's literally saying they came from hell in Somalia and they all need to go back because all they do is whine, complain, and bitch. And these are sound bites that the news going, oh my gosh, what? Like hate and all that kind of stuff. We saw the congresswoman, or maybe it's a senator for that area, running away, from a Fox News reporter going, hey, we found billions of dollars in fraud in your district. Are you going to address anything like that? She goes, your tonality with me is hateful. You
Hmm.
can't. I'm not speaking to Fox News. Your tone is hateful. It's like it's not my tone. It's a fact. There's billions of fraud going through you and your district. Would you like here to comment? So all that is going away. And by the way, in terms of the coworker thing at BlackBerry, I made sure that I started the house party stuff. What people don't know, in university, I was part of an amazing group of men where we raised a lot of money for big brothers, little brothers, adopt kids. Not real adopting, you don't have college students adopting, but helping little boys who are being raised without fathers go out, take them out to do some real cool stuff, big brothers, little brothers. We also threw raging keggers twice a year. So our best one was brought in the Budweiser Big Rig. That was our best one. We had $1 million insurance policy. We hired off-duty police from Waterloo Police Department. And then on top of that, we had 1,000 cups we sold for $20 to come to the homecoming party that we threw. And we also hired private security, and we also hired Bacchus and Foot Patrol that were at our school. Canadians would certainly know this, to make sure everybody had a great time, but also make sure have a great time. But we're not sovereignty. You don't trespass. Like dudes, you don't do bad stuff to women, and women, you don't do bad stuff to dudes. Like you don't take advantage of each other. So that went off well. So I made sure I threw the best house parties, and nobody threw a house party like me when I was at BlackBerry. And you have a lot of fun because, at the end of the day, we're human beings and we have needs to have fun and social, but you also have to know those boundaries when you're in a workspace environment, a military environment, or if you're doing something in America or in the world that is either for good, and if you're doing it for harm, there's your FA or FO, and we see the extent to that as well. So just a little bit of a throw in there from back in the day that I was part of the greatest keg party, and we brought in the Budweiser Big Rig. And the Budweiser Big Rig, by the way, you could pour it directly from the taps, and everybody just loved it. We had DJs and we had music, so that was a pretty cool experience at 18, 19. And then
Well, that's good. Yeah.
where we are is like just real life. There's a real life, and quote unquote know your limits, play within it. And that extends to everything that we're seeing today that President Trump is rolling out, especially on Venezuela and other things too.
Well, it's the same thing I've been telling people about the whole, like, government is supposed to be small, first off, and then we, the people, are that government. Representatives represent us. That is how our founders established it. But when you look at a small government, it's not a one size fits all in a different manner. That portion is applied to the personalities of people. And that's why we all, especially when you're a veteran, it sounds like that's all we talk about. Oh, when you're a veteran, when you're a veteran, when you're in the military, when you're military, but military is a prime example of a one size fits all when it comes to the regulations, in your branch regulations, depending
Yeah.
on what you're doing, who you are, and what military branch you represent. It is a one size fits all in this manner because those regulations, customs, procedures, and then obviously military laws, they're broad. And then if whatever case it is, if it's a good case or a bad case, but whatever that may be, then it'll depend on, well, this scenario happened here and then what applies to it. It's the same thing. But when you look at the military, I mean, every military in the world has all different personalities, all different walks of life, all different religious beliefs and practices. Uh, and it doesn't, everybody works to a common goal in the military. It's like because you're under a chain of command. And when it's a good chain of command, which is what we're seeing, and this, it hasn't been overall super bad in the military as we know overall. The overall super bad was the government, and then the commanders, and also the congressmen and women button heads throughout the years. And commanders have absolutely defied certain orders, and that's why we've had cases where Navy SEAL had to kill his way out of Pakistan and different places, and then also finally it was proven that hey, he was trained to do that, and he got left behind, or got all out. Or that's just one incident. It's happened all over the board. So the disarray came with the Congress trying to take the power, and then also flipping the judicial system, where the judicial branch and the lawyers and everything was trying to dictate to the legislative branch and the executive branch. So it's like all things got disarray that way. But the military as a whole has been the saving grace all throughout history, and has
Yeah.
actually maintained where it didn't get over lopsided with Congress. It was, I mean, it's kind of like, riding on the side of a mountain. Yeah, it was leaning, and it was getting there to where they almost took, dominated the whole military. But thank God, that's why we have General Valets of the world, General McInerney's of the world, and they've held their weight, and their commands all the way down, and their divisions pulled and held their weight, and it didn't tip over. And now we got it back here, and then we're going, hey, let's get off this mountain, let's get on solid ground for a moment, rebuild everything, and let's put a structure around that mountain. That way, that mountain's got extra structure. That's what everybody's witnessing now. But that's why we talk about military so much, because it's not been as lopsided in the military. Yeah, there's been commanders relieved of duty, but when you look at the bigger picture and how many commanders there are, it's a lot more good. But the military is the most perfect example of the one size fits all here, and then everybody has personalities here and the boundaries. You know when to put. You can't push someone too much because they're at their point of going, okay, just let them walk it off. Let them breathe. Leave him alone. You leave her alone. Separate for a while, and then come back. We'll come back at it, and you'll be able to tell when that person has simmered down and that person has, and then assess the situation. So that's why I tell people it is the perfect example to know personalities, boundaries, and then how that fits up here. And everybody knows. I mean, I still have buddies to this day who are Buddhists, atheists, agnostic, but they're the biggest patriot I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You make a point about that. I was invited again by John Valley. Like, Brad, be a good idea to be on this call. Roger that, sir. And that's tomorrow. And it's him hosting the call with General McInerney, and there are over 15 other retired generals, admirals, and these are flag officers who are still serving, right? And not wearing the uniform. They're retired, but they're still serving because they're getting. I doubt there's any senators, congressmen, congresswomen, members of parliament, whatever countries are sitting there after getting, I've got my pension in, I'm doing this, I'm consulting to whatever I'm doing right now. Let me get together and discuss ways that we can make our country great, that we can volunteer patriotically for our country, our nation, and contribute our expertise, our knowledge, our contacts to helping out segments of society. I can almost guarantee there are not senators, congressmen, congresswomen, or members of parliament doing that right now. But these men, and there are a few women as well, out of the senior officers who will be on this call tomorrow, that I'm just going to be fly on the wall, been asked slashed, let's do this. It's incredibly inspirational. It's moving as well too. That this is still going on their own accord, because in their heart they love America, and in their minds they can't stand to see what has happened. And even though President Trump is in, they know they still have something else unique to contribute. And
The
that,
other thing, their ages. Their ages.
oh, they're
These
in their
people be doing
late
anything.
60s, 70s, and 80s. And General McInerney is 88. He's a year and a half away from turning 90. And it's him and General Valley, who just turned 86. And they've been friends since West Point in the late 50s. And those men are leading this call, this private Zoom
That's why
call.
I wish people would apply that. Not just here,
Incredible.
apply their ages and what they could be doing. They've served their service already in service is already there's no I mean it's unblemishable, it's impeccable, it's
National leaders, these people.
so there's that in service already.
Yeah.
And if we were gonna well I'll speak for myself. If I was gonna be like, hey, tip my hat, hey, you have done, but you don't even have to do anything anymore.
No.
Those are the kind you would do it to and say, hey, you scroll, and they're beyond the scroll, they could be playing golf, they could be traveling and hiking or whatever it is, just whatever would be their leisure time. Nope. They like this. And yeah, talking about the congressmen and women, there may be some new ones coming on board in for the future, but the past 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, however far back we want to go. I would believe we went to the moon before I would believe that you'd say, hey, we got some congressmen and women that are meeting up after work and hours and they're having a
Yeah.
little party. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no, that ain't happening.
Yeah.
Unless they were exchanging insider information, right?
Yeah. And this is their way
Hey,
to
about
fight
this
for
stuff.
America. And this is their way to fight
Yeah,
for America, to fight for
exactly.
their values, to fight for their duty, honor, country, for those West Pointers who took that oath. And I'm emphasizing the age here for the audience, because the
Yeah.
majority of our audiences are women, and the majority of them are mama bears or warrior grannies. It's amazing, and they're all amazing. And very few of the men will, speak up in the comments in the chat. That's okay, because we're not asking a lot to speak up, and but anybody can chime in. The point being is, in their late 60s, post-retirement from a full career in military service, and most of them in God's light, most of them are Christians, not all. They're taken upon their own accord when most people in the world in their late 60s or 70s, retirement age, are doing exactly what you said, golf course. Maybe they got their home in Florida. Maybe they are in the seniors' homes in their 70s and 80s. These men, mostly men and some women, are in the studies, the very studies of their own home they've lived in for typically 20, 30 years plus, and they're doing these Zoom calls, Jetson age that we live in, to figure out how they can contribute to the fight for America's soul, how they can pass on and knowledge transfer and share experience to the senior enlisted who are also on the call. And there's a few senior enlisted, and then also the senior officers who are on the call, and those who will be dissecting it and then sharing that forward is monumental to me. And it's one, and I can't say everybody because I don't know a lot of them, I definitely, it's not my first call I've been on with them, just sitting there flying the wall. But my goodness, like nobody's making excuses like, I haven't had my coffee and I need to have a medical appointment to go here. My doctor has to give me permission. No, they just step into what they have in their heart and their mind, the oath that they took. And they're like, I'm getting on this call. I'm going to see what everybody has to say. And they're also respectful with each other, right? And there's also humor, and that's a cool thing. There's still some dark humor, like you've talked about. I've had in my life too, where you just kind of like it's a great way to shake it off, and you just see them laugh sometimes, and it's amazing because that's what we need to get back to, everybody. That's where we need to be. We need to embody that from when the kid comes out of the womb in the family values, restore that to America, to the rest of the world, to what we saw that greatest generation stand up, rise up to the call, regardless of what we now know about World War II. They still went off. The men were supported by the women. The women were at home doing everything they could for their part of the effort, and hope to God that never has to happen again. But the ethos and the creed, this is the essence of America and heart and courage and strength, what everybody needs in their community to learn to embody and to share. Amazing. And Donald Trump is showing people that and using a little bit of humor to boot.
Exactly. Because the women today would be on Instagram making all their little half naked videos and trying to score with someone else. Because
I
I
don't call
mean,
it. I don't call
it's insane. Like it's like this social media got it is shoot.
it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I've noticed TikTok and Instagram when you do a video now and you post it, you can only hashtag 5 hashtags now. So they're gonna slowly start. Obviously, you can't rip the rug out because I really believe that kids would commit suicide if you rip the rug out and just demolish social media. I mean, I think that they have gotten that. I mean, I've even heard friends talk about when they take their phone away from a child, how they scream, kick, and just like they
Yeah.
can't I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like,
It's
whoa,
insane.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
So.
it's the new pacifier. It's the technology pacifier. It's
And you
in
have to like, and with that, keeping that in mind, the ramifications of like a child that would, do something. And I've heard it happening out there. There's reports out there of children commit suicide because of harsh punishment over that. I don't know what the numbers are, but that's why they can't rip the rug out. So they got to do little things like that. Okay, wait, 5 hashtags, what? And then, just like slowly walk it back.
yeah.
And but just like X, I mean, I look on it, and Facebook and X are the most liberal now when it comes to pages and people with blue checks. And I mean, what they're saying are so atrocious. I mean, it is truly sedition what they're saying about the military and President Trump. It is
Yeah.
straight up sedition. And the Seditions Act portion punished people, not just journalists. They punished people in 1798 during that wartime situation. So people need to realize that hey, at the end of the day, it's who's in charge, and it's also who's supporting who's in charge. And when that number is overwhelming, such as this past election with the popular vote and the electoral, then all the commanders would have to do is present the case to the people that support, say, hey, this is what sedition means, and this is what this means. And then people go, well, we trust you, we trust all of you, commanders. Then that means they can enforce based off the will of the people on certain people such as this. So that's why I've been telling people on these X, I'll troll the liberals on the X and Facebook. And I'm like, you realize that you can be charged for sedition for what you're saying about the commander in chief and what you're saying during a wartime operation. This is a serious matter. All right. You can put aside whatever you don't like somebody. You don't even know why you don't like them. These people really don't know why they don't like President Trump. Your rights
Yeah.
haven't been taken away. What's been taken away is the funding. from the American people who are tired of it, going, okay, you think you were born the wrong way? All right, that's on you. Go on, make it happen yourself. The same thing. Like, all right, Brad, I want a Corvette. Well, you say, well, can you afford one? No, but you can. It's the same thing. It's just a different topic in a subject. But they go, well, someone says, I was born a male and I think I should be a female. They will, well, how can you do that? Well, they have this surgery, and you can have your little thing. Well,
it is stupid
go
does.
pay for it.
Yeah.
Go pay for it. No, I can't afford it. You can't. No. See, that's the taxpayer. It's a different verbiage and it's a different analogy, but it's the same concept because they want the taxpayer to pay for it. They say, oh, it's a health issue. It's a health. No, it's your health issue. It's your mental health issue, first off, but it's your health issue, if anything. It's not mine. Right. That's what I love during COVID. I used to tell people during COVID, I'm like, hey, serious question. Did you take your vitamins this morning? Because if you don't take yours, mine don't work.
Yeah, exactly.
I gave them hell back then. I wish everybody had known me then. They'd have really thought I had an attitude problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's like wearing Depend diapers, right? Get that guy to wear Depend diapers so it doesn't. Anyway, we go down that whole crazy here. But what we're also talking about, the Sedition Act you bring up, is because there's been no consequences that for the last several generations, really society-wise, unless your parents had instilled values in you and there was a consequence at home or at school if you got out of line. I mean, a just wise consequence, not Sister Lorraine grade 6 that we had. She's going to come around, she's going to take a ruler and whack you and whack you and whack you just because she needs to work out some problems of her own. No, but I mean just consequences, and you don't see that. And people think that these soul trolls on social media with micro penis, mask-tard, raging normies, right, who think I'm just going to post it there and there's no consequence to that. Well, it might not be today, but it might be next year. There's a knock on your door and see you later. And you're going to get a lovely new pair of bracelets. They're going to look silver, but they're probably aluminum or stainless steel. And you have to wear your bracelets like this with your palms together in front of your body as you're being marched into a police car and a police vehicle. And that's what we're going to get back to over time. I feel is these homegrown, I guess you would call them, values, which then would extend to the kitchen table, the family, the community, and then society at large. But people have to choose on how they conduct themselves. And I really appreciate what we're seeing from President Trump, the administration, the White Hat Alliance as well, and how they're taking that. And Cybercom kind of making sure things get handled in that way too. So good. So good.
And people talking about hadn't seen Sedition either, and some people still, in the comments will be, "Oh, we haven't seen it yet either." Now, and I'm like, "Yeah, but you're watching an operation that the whole way they're cleaning out, but they're also while they're there making sure the holes plugged, like even with tunnels. Like they've talked about this. There was a Defense One trying to remember, was it Task and Purpose? It's one of our military publications out there that they covered about the tunnels. Not all tunnels can be flooded. And I remember about 3 years ago, I was on a podcast and I talked about, I said, well, some of these tunnels are so long and dark, but then also have, spread all over underneath that, to save manpower and energy and whatnot, we just utilize technology. And I said, I know by now we have little robots that you can put actual bombs on, cameras on, whatever, that you can remote control, just like a remote control. And some have the little rubber tires, some have the rubber tracks. It depends on where they are and what they're doing. And so how fast they need to go in and out with these little robots. And so I was talking about that on the podcast, and I said, well, by now, I said, I haven't seen them, but I'm sure by now we have a robotic uh, you know, drone that can go in the water that replicates a submarine, but small version, a mini version. And I'll never forget. This is why I tell people all the time. I'm like, look, you can make a comment, that's fine, but be willing to stand by it, but also be willing to look. Like if you claim that you're an expert or in the know or knowledgeable, you better make sure that whatever you say, you better be willing to stand by it, because if it's something negative or you haven't researched or whatnot. So this Navy person was trolling the crap out of my Instagram back then. Oh, I lost all respect for you, Derek Johnson, talking about the tunnels being flooded and throwing in a submarine drone. And
What are you
then
talking?
the P-8 Poseidon, I said, well, the P-8 is a sniffer. That's what they call it. Slang is a sniffer plane.
Subcontractor.
And I said, with the technology that's on board, it's such great technology, and the communication system they have, but then also the sniffer. And I said, it's typically an aircraft you see on the water, right, out in the ocean, because of what its purpose is. And I'm like, how come they're flying from Washington State to Florida back and forth? And every time I screenshots, capture the aircraft operating, it's operating over waterways that look like rivers, streams, and swamps areas. And I'm like, they're doing massive loops. Well, this person, I love it because this is perfect. And they say, oh, I lost all respect for you. I was in the Navy, and but this ain't. It wasn't like one. Jaco and I had a show like maybe 3 or 4 days after that. He didn't see that comment, because you and I and he and all the people, we don't have time for that kind of stuff. Like because we're doing what we're doing and operating what we're doing. And Jaco was like, man, I was watching. I watched a little bit of your podcast the other day, just to see what your assessment was on a certain thing. And he was like, I love what you said about the P-8. He said a lot of people don't know about the P-8. He was like, it's one of the when us SEALs get into places that our other communications don't work or fail. He was like, right there, baby, they got us. And I was like, all he did was validate that. He didn't even see and know about any of that portion. And then not long after, just about 6 or 7 weeks ago, I saw an article about the flooding of the tunnels. We couldn't flood all of them for certain things, which means they did what to others? They flooded tunnels, right? And then there's also a drone submarine that they use. So it could be verily that they used it in some of these tunnels to also prevent, you know, injuries, death, and other things. Because with the technology we have, with the cameras on them, imagine what dropping a submarine drone with the cameras and being able to use all the different technology, even in dark, murky waters, to see certain things that are in these tunnels, right? So, yeah. So the other thing is to track where the exits are, right? And that way, okay, here's an exit here. All right, send a team over there. Let's, bomb it, blockade it, however they're going to do it. So there's things like that people just don't realize. And there was an article back during 2020, I think it was, because I was laughing back then. I was laughing so hard because I knew what was going on, and people would say, "Oh, I felt this. I was woke up at 1 or 2 a.m. and I felt this like nauseous sensation, like felt like the earth shook a little bit." And I'm like, I know what that was.
Yep.
And there was an article in Nebraska that in the middle of this field, like this just explosion took place.
Yeah,
Right.
I remember seeing the video.
Yeah, and it was like they thought, oh, it was oh, do we have geysers in Nebraska? And it's like, well, you might, but I know what else you got too.
Massive amount of
Yeah,
tunnels there.
yeah. So all these things like it when you had to see this operation, but then make sure, hey, no more loopholes here. All right. If they're going to create something in the future, the enemy, they're going to have to create it from scratch or try to reinvent the wheel, but they're not going to have this access here. So you do all these things along the way. Then you're showing distractions but getting distractions. People forget distractions are also engagement. You however you want to look at it.
Yep.
It's the same thing I say. Cocky is the same thing as confident. Just depends on if you like the person's personality or not. But to me, people would say President Trump's cocky. I'm like, nah, he's confident. All right, because he's got the facts to back it up. All right, but if you want to call him cocky, I'm all right with that because I like it. So there's that. So many people, the distractions are actually engagements. It gets you involved, and then we find out who wants to be a part, like you're talking about with the generals. All right, who's doing what after the fact? Are you just going to your town hall to, oh, I'm involved in the city council and I'm involved? What are you doing after? Are you writing books? Are you studying the laws and what are you doing afterwards? That's when you become a true patriot, a true warrior, whatever you want to call it. So this whole thing is leading. Everything's like President Trump's post last night was complete validation, absolute complete validation when he said pardons, commutations, everything, every legal document is Autopen, no legal effect. Well,
Yep.
It didn't have legal effect. That terminology people need to realize is it already didn't have legal effect because it was a government exile and a puppet government. It's all irregular, unconventional warfare. It's a tactic, a strategy. And because it's all of them, what's that leading to? That right there was one, validation. Two, it's showing you, okay, the liberals are really about to lose their minds now. So it's the old bait, we're baiting them up, and we're going to hit that switch somewhere, and that switch is going to be your complete validation, however they play it out, to show you that, all right, military tribunals, the punishments, this is where the Q talks about they won't even be able to walk down the streets, right? So that portion's coming because that's why Waltz is back in the picture now. President Trump's roasting him and the Somalis in Minnesota. That's why Obama's been piping off it. They've done all this strategically to get the liberals heroes. And then you and I know in strategic operations like this, especially irregular and unconventional warfare, that's like I told people before, it's not going to be you or me. It's not going to be the generals. It's not going to be the admirals. It's not going to be it's going to be all of what they think their heroes are that's going to exonerate President Trump. It's not going to be a Republican, conservative, patriot, military. It's going to be someone that's on the polar opposite that's going to make confessions and or if they didn't make the confession, then okay, well, then we're going to show the world what you did to the world and let the world decide. And then we know what that's going to be because it involves child trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking. And then to the liberals, this ain't to our base and our audiences, but to the liberals out there, if you have friends that are Democrats or they're wavering, sitting on the fence, remind them that drug trafficking is one of the main forms of funding for child trafficking, sex trafficking, and human trafficking. So all these liberals out there talking about, oh, who's really on these vessels and who has the command to blow this up and authority? We already know that. Special operations, this ain't new, ladies and gentlemen. These have been operations for years that they just barely touched. They just nicked them just along the way. President Trump is obliterating and decimating. All right, doing what Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of War, just said yesterday. He said, President Trump has given our commanders their full authority to do their jobs. And that's what we're there for. All right. Yep. And so everything is coming full circle, as I say it is. And this is what that was yesterday. So we're moving into that because you and I think we're pretty accurate on this too. We don't make predictions ever make predictions. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Bosey, Colonel Sellers, and even Lieutenant Colonel Lennox on one of the podcasts we were recently on, we were talking about, what's moving into December. And before we get to July 2026, July 4th, you couldn't, in our opinion, I'll say it for myself again. In my opinion, I don't think you can get on the other side of July the 4th, 2026 and still have so much disarray, what people think is disarray. So it's like we are moving rapidly to and then the language right now, press conferences, war powers resolution. No one's talked about the war powers except for me on our shows, right? And then you, me, lieutenant colonels, etc., right? The war powers. Nobody else out there is talking about it.
No.
So why is it all of a sudden now in the presser yesterday? It's war powers resolution. And does President Trump, the entry, Tim Kaine, the representative, talking about, I'm going to introduce, I'm going to try to block the U.S. military because there's no authorization, without authorization in the war powers. There's already authorization, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard me talk about it a million times. There's already authorization. So see, they're just now, what Lieutenant Colonel Bosey said 2 months ago on one of our shows. He said, ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind, special operations is either 3, 4, or 5 weeks ahead, 3, 4, 5 months ahead, 3, 4, 5 years ahead, depending on what it is that we're talking about. But we're always ahead of things for a reason. And so that's what everybody's seeing now. Now you're just now seeing and hearing the chatter about the war powers resolution. And the key thing with that, though, is the cherry on top. That's why when I saw the Supreme Court docket, first thing I did was I text Tracy Joe, and I said, you got to get Jaco right now. Tell him to drop everything, whatever he's doing, you tell him to drop it right now. I was joking, but they did. He was like, hey, I got 1 o'clock. I was like, dude, I was joking, but let's do it. I was just meaning like in the next day or two. And I was in South Dakota last October, and we really, within like 30 minutes, I threw up the little selfie stick and went full circle with Jaco. And I was like, dude, Supreme Court docket 23-939, go read it. And I read it right there on the spot with him. That way it was completely, now people would have to believe he and I that it was not planned. But you could probably, if anybody's a judge of facial expressions and everything, you could tell by Jaco that he hadn't seen or read this yet. So anyway, 23-939 is very key because, ladies and gentlemen, all this chatter is saying, oh, President Trump can't do this, he can't do that, this is unlawful, this. Perfect. Because what is the rebuttal to that? What would be President Trump's? Well, didn't Osama bin Laden, wasn't he quote unquote killed on May 2nd, 2011? And then did Gaddafi not get assassinated, quote unquote, October 2011, which has been after bin Laden? Okay, who is Gaddafi? Oh, he's the leader of Libya. Well, what was that little thing that Hillary was involved in, a little thing called Benghazi? And where's that? Libya? All right, so how come Obama's name is not in the War Powers Resolution Act anywhere?
Yep.
I mean, so Jaco, when I showed him that docket, it has 3 amici curiae, friends of the court, and one of them is Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. All right, and anybody knows any history with
not
Keith
a TV
Kellogg,
general, a real general.
a real general.
Yep.
And it says the question posed was, could a president order SEAL Team 6 to carry out an assassination, basically? And then in the bottom it says, well, in the middle, the amici curiae and multiple, it says more senior officials, military and cabinet, says an astounding no. And then in the bottom, it says any military officer, which would have been obviously the commander, the general, whoever gave that command, any military officer who carried out such an order committed the gravest of crimes, murder. And so that's what, I mean, you talking about, that's why President Trump has been amping up with everything. So, people need to just relax. You're going to see the punishment side. Just relax on that. That's that. Everything had to have a build up to get everybody out there involved the correct way. But also, I think a lot of these, you and I know this, and especially the colonels and generals, they know this because, but I've started to tell people when you're rooting for death, I don't think you realize what you're really rooting for. We should be more ashamed that we allowed this to get to where it got in humanity versus the rooting for death. But we're going to find out a lot of these patriots yeah, you ain't gonna be as tough as you think you are when it comes to military tribunals, depending on what they show. But if they show the firing squads, you're not gonna be as tough as you think you are in another manner.
That's not the movie. Not the
You
movie.
know,
Real life here.
exactly. That's
Yep.
the real deal.
Yep.
And my grandpa always talked about that death in World War II, talking about World War II. He always talked about, he's like, people think they want what they want, but when you're rooting for a man to die, it don't matter how evil they are. Yeah, punishment, sure, but there still has to be some layer of that, not remorse in the wrong way, but remorse meaning like, man, gosh, how did this atrocity happen to humanity like that? And then reinstilling those skill sets in the people of how to identify this. Like, hey, I think this person right here is going to be an issue. Uh, and then you and I both know there's malicious killers out there too that don't none of their cognitive, they have no cognitive ability whatsoever. Their chemical imbalance is not even there. So it's not even a balance. It's not
Yeah,
even an imbalance. They don't have it.
empathy
You
is
know,
they're a sociopath. Yep.
yeah, and we have to reinstill in people that skill set to go, hey, sharpen your skills, elevate your thinking. I had people when they were saying, hey, you ought to write a book that dummies down laws and orders. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. I need to write a book that elevates your thinking, that elevates and sharpens your skills. Now, there could be a layman's term for it, but let's change that rhetoric around. Let's change that. Say, no, dummy down. Let's change it to an elevate up, right? Let's just change the language. My mother's always said that if you speak positivity, it may be the same, outcome like that. A book for dummies could just be a layman's terms, but if you call it a dummy, then you're still promoting yourself as a dummy. Versus, let's lose that language. Let's call it an elevation. Let's call it the Midnight Rider Bible, or
Yep.
let's elevate your way of thinking. Let's make you think that, hey, I mean, I'm all about that. That is a true teamwork there. So, hey, you may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but we're gonna find out. Well, we're gonna try to sharpen it, right? So there's positivity,
Yep.
and then you
That's
might just
exactly.
find out it does click, and someone's gonna find a skill set that they didn't realize they had, and then they're gonna it they're gonna find a new whatever in life. They're gonna find a new passion for sure, and then they're gonna be the people that when the work day's done, they're gonna find themselves in that extra time doing what you and I've done. I mean, that's what I do when my hunting isn't always just hunting. My hunting is where everything's quiet and my brain think and I'll get my phone. And so it depends on what I've seen all day. Or if I'm sitting near a creek where there's running water, I know I can whisper in my phone, but that's when I can whisper a note or I can type a note. That's where a lot of my songs have been written, is in a deer stand, in my books, in my thoughts, in my notes, in my brainstorming, if you will, are there. So I'm not just hunting. Sometimes people think
Yeah.
that.
It's
So I've
church.
been right.
Nature.
My dad and mother can attest to when I was writing the documents when I started all this, I was living in Colorado from 2017 to 2019. But when I was writing the documents in the chronological order, they can tell you when I would visit, I would sit 12, 14 hours. They would come in there. I think you might need to get some sleep. I'm like, no, I got to get this done. It. But it was mainly editing. Does this need to go first or second? This here or this here? I was trying to get it in that chronological where it flowed for people to be a layman's. But I
Yeah.
spent 14, 16, 18 hours outside of what I was already doing, typing that on the Google Drive. Um, and so, people that is that dedication that we're talking about. And but everybody needs to find some passion in this. And the greatest thing about it is we can be spoiled in America. You can find a little niche that you love. You may love election interference and assessments of that more than you love, special operations, whatever, unconventional warfare. You may be, whatever it could be. We can be spoiled in America, but
Yeah.
you need to be spoiled the right way and find something, somehow, some way to contribute, to leave your footprint and your fingerprint there for history's sake. You know?
Yep. Unless you're Somali in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and you came in the wrong way, and now your temporary protected status visas have been revoked. Go back to hell, the president says. So there we are. All right, Midnight Rider 1, 2, the Bible, and the Royal Flush Country Music at rattletrap1776.com. Everybody, links in the description. So right after this now, you're going to pour yourself a coffee and have a good stretch outside, do a couple jumping jacks, and then get back in that deer stand and go grab that buck then.
I'm going to try to. Definitely going to try to. So
Excellent. Yeah. Hey, everybody, leave a comment as well for us. We appreciate it. And if something in this show inspired you, just include that in the comment. We'd love to hear that, read it, our team see it as well. All right. Cheers, man. All right, you sovereign souls, now is the time to protect your money with gold and silver if you already have not. And if you are and you have a chance to do so, I highly encourage to do so even more, because gold and silver will launch the golden age, which Commander-in-Chief Trump has continuously referenced.
The dollar is going down, and it's not a pretty picture, and it's not being sustained by proper policy and proper thinking. This was an opportunity, and maybe an opportunity to show people what's happening with the dollar so that we can do something about it.
Get some if you can. BuddhaLovesGold.com will take you to our partner Goldco. They have over 6,000 5-star reviews. This is why now is the time to buy gold and silver, because we have thousands of Americans buying gold today. The rising inflation has reduced our purchasing power. Dysfunctional politics don't work for us. The US dollar has lost over 97% of its value since 1913, while the price of gold has increased over 9,000%. Silver has fared well against the dollar too, with the silver price increasing over 4,500% since 1913. It's about wealth protection. Physical precious metals act as a hedge against dips in volatile markets. Go over to BuddhaLovesGold.com. That's www.BUDDHA, BuddhaLovesGold.com. You will download your free silver and gold guide today, and our great people over there at Goldco will take care of you. That's BuddhaLovesGold.com. You'll see a picture of me right on there, Brad Wozny. And once again, BRICS is the new financial system. Asset-backed precious metals is the way of the future. This is about financial control. Diversifying your assets with gold and silver puts you in control of your wealth at BuddhaLovesGold.com. Thanks for joining us on the program, ladies and gentlemen. Please like, follow, subscribe, share this with 9 friends and family. And of course, if you enjoy our blinged Buddha firing red pills from his 9mm, let us know.